Hello, my spooky friends, and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. Today, I have a little kind of surprise for you, I guess, this week. I had just watched a documentary on Hulu the other day called Little Miss Innocent. And the show tells a story of Kaitlyn Conley, who is a 31-year-old former receptionist who claims she has been wrongfully convicted of the 2015 killing of Mary Yoder. Mary Yoder was her former boss and the mother of her ex-boyfriend, Adam. Now, this occurred in Sauquoit, New York, and that's fairly near to me, and just the case itself had me just wanting to run here and tell you all about it. So we will have 2 true crime uploads this week. Now, this case, I firmly believe, is not what it seems. The twists and turns that happen in this case are just mind-blowing, and the people involved, like all these family members, are just interesting to encounter in this setting. And I really want to know what you think about this case. So today we're going to be kind of going along with the docuseries. I did a lot of this just from like memory and what I was watching, and confirming it with my research as well. I just am very intrigued to see and hear your point of views on this one. So, as always, I will be adding this case to my true crime ASMR series playlist. As you know, this is where you can find past and future videos in this series. So let's get into it. Kaitlyn Conley grew up in Sauquoit, New York. She grew up with 2 siblings and 2 loving parents. She was a pretty shy girl who always dreamed of a house, a husband, and 2 kids. Katie had gotten into a relationship with Adam Yoder in 2011. This was her first adult relationship. Adam was the son of Mary and Robert Yoder. Mary and Robert had met in college and would go on to start their own chiropractic office, and they would hire a Kaitlyn Conley as a receptionist. Katie and Adam both worked there, and at the beginning of their relationship were very in love. However, the relationship would turn into a very toxic one. And from my impression, it was toxic on both sides. It seems as if Katie seemed almost indecisive on if she really could decide if she really wanted Adam. They would break up and then get back together, and Adam unfortunately had a severe drinking problem that led to many fights between the 2. And one evening, Adam blacked out. Now, There are many voicemails that are used in this series, where you're hearing Adam either tell Katie to go F herself, that he hates her, and then him begging for her to call him. The Conley family was interviewed, and they state how Adam would send Katie these letters of him saying, "I love you, Katie," like 100 times, handwritten. Which, at first, when they were presenting these ways that Adam was proclaiming his love to Katie, I was like, well, every girl wants to feel loved. But it was really on the fence of obsessive, in my opinion. But one evening after drinking, Adam blacked out. Now, according to Katie, Adam had raped her and threatened her life. She even goes to the police station to report it, and the police have her do a controlled phone call to see if Adam would admit to the rape. Adam does not, and it's honestly a really hard phone call to hear. I would like to say that this documentary may be triggering for those who have been in relationships like this. A lot of this was very, unfortunately reminiscent for me, and seeing it just made me aware to make you aware that it could possibly be triggering for you if you have a past in a toxic relationship. But in regards to this, you can hear the emotion and pleading in Adam's voice in that phone call, where he clearly doesn't remember what he did. He states that, and is pretty much hoping and praying that he didn't do this to Katie. And I know many will disagree with me, but Katie also seems really emotionally distraught. Katie would provide pictures that were like proof of the assault, which were debunked as the pictures were dated 2 years prior to the assault. Now, in that regard, I would like everybody to remember that Adam is from a family of doctors. They have a doctor's office. They are a very, to the public, they are a very rich, they are the very power family of this town. And Katie comes from a middle-class family. Now, I do believe that it was wrong for her to use these photos, but I do also believe she said to the investigators that they wouldn't be able to help her with the rape. And after the controlled phone call, and Adam basically says, "No, I didn't rape you," he doesn't admit to anything. She leaves and basically says, "Never mind, I'm leaving," because I think Katie knew at this point that there was nothing that they could do for her that would lead to anything really. Now, we are continuously having this back and forth between the two, and to everyone around them, the relationship was serious, and they were still together even when they weren't. But upon interviews with Katie's family, Adam was getting more obsessive. You can obviously see that Adam was kind of like this poster boy to his family, and to Katie's family, they just were standoffish on the topic of Adam. But according to Adam's family, Katie and Adam were in love, and they were hearing wedding bells. It's very abundantly clear that Adam's family didn't really know him. So now we are going to fast forward to the year 2015. Adam breaks up with Katie, and it's final. He tells his family she will not be attending family functions, that they're done. There was alleging that she had slept with someone in their friend group. When interviewed, Katie said she did not cheat, but they were broken up at the time. I think this is messy, and I think a lot of the time they bring this forward and it feels like they are like trying to tear apart her character by saying that she cheated on Adam. When you listen to these voicemails, he basically says he hates her, and there's toxicity on both sides. Now, Katie, throughout all of these breakups and ups and downs, remains working at the family chiropractic office. She's working hand in hand with Adam's mom, Mary, as her boss. And even Katie's mother said that Mary was like a second mother to Katie. Now, the breakup must have been, at the very least, mutual, because Adam and Mary continued working at the chiropractic office together. Sauquoit is a small town, and Katie and Adam were involved in the same friend group. Just, to me, if you remain working at the same place under your ex-boyfriend's family, the breakup must have been not necessarily smooth, but you're still hanging out and around each other, so they were at least friends. So, on July 20th, 2015, per Katie, who is the last person to have seen Mary before she became very ill, she states that it was a normal day at the office, Mary arriving at the office a little after 8. Katie states it was a normal, busy day at the office until the end of the day when Mary was getting very sick. Mary was running back and forth to the bathroom, and when the end of the day came, she just left very abruptly, which was very unusual for Mary. Mary is described as this very loving, bubbly person, and for her to run out so quickly, this wasn't normal. On her way home, Mary would call her husband Bill and leave a voicemail and describe to him how awful she felt on her way home. And Bill and Mary, they were doctors. They were very competent people that were active in the medical field. They assumed Mary had been sick from a stomach bug. Things would become more severe when Mary was soon admitted to the hospital. At this point, Adam and Katie had been broken up for 10 months, but the pair remained friends. Adam had asked Katie to come to the hospital to support him and his family. His family really included Katie as their own. Katie states that when she arrived, she really understood the severity of the situation because Mary was in the ICU. She had a trach tube and her heart continued to stop, and they were continuously having to resuscitate her. Less than 48 hours later, Mary would pass away on July 22nd, 2015. Now, there are two major parts in the Yoder family besides Bill and Adam. Mary and William had 3 children, 2 girls, Tamron and Leanne. I believe the second daughter's name is, the more stronger personality of the two is Tamron. When you watch the documentary, she is just the most expressive in her thoughts. Now, when Mary passed away, the family was not given many answers. The cause of death was unknown, and the family was just distraught. An autopsy offered little in the way of answers, and a closer look suggested Mary was poisoned. Tests were ordered to search for the presence of toxins, including arsenic, cyanide, and other poisons. The results came back negative. A poison control expert suspected colchicine, and this was an anti-gout drug with a narrow therapeutic index. That means that the range between therapeutic and toxic doses is small, and in some cases they overlap. In its pure form, a tiny amount of colchicine is deadly. In October 2015, lab results revealed that Mary Yoder, who did not have gout, had a lethal amount of colchicine in her system. Now, as always, in these investigations, they start with the spouse. And detectives began their investigation with William. He had met Mary in college in 1975 and was 8 years her senior. So they looked into the insurance policies as potential motive. The search revealed nothing suspicious, and that motive was ruled out. However, good old Bill, he was not who he seemed. Shortly after Mary's death, Bill would begin a relationship with Mary's sister, Kathy. And I mean, they allege that their relationship did not start until months after Mary's death, and that her death brought them closer and all that bullcrap. But even Bill's children were stunned when their father sat them down in, I believe, January and said he was beginning a relationship with his deceased wife's sister. Now, despite this huge motive, investigators were not convinced it was Bill. They were at a standstill until a letter was sent to them anonymously, and this letter implicated Adam Yoder. The letter goes into great detail and is a couple paragraphs long, and goes into the details on why Adam Yoder is guilty of the death of Mary Yoder. The letter described where the murder weapon was, and that he had the colchicine bottle just under his passenger side seat. At this point, the colchicine poisoning had not been publicized, really. This was not known by the public, and this kind of proved to investigators that whoever had sent this letter was either involved or, at the very least, involved in the inner circle of the Yoder family. Investigators would go to look through Adam's Jeep that was filled with trash, and while searching for this bottle, the investigators just give Adam the letter. They come there, they say, "We need to search your Jeep. Here's why. Here's a letter, this big letter of evidence. So you can basically know everything in this letter, and everything it states. And the investigators, while Adam is reading the letter, find the bottle, and from underneath the seat, they find that it was wrapped in a paper bag and the receipt. They took Adam into custody and interviewed him, and at this point, the Yoders were looking into attorneys for Adam. Now, Adam's relationship with Mary was tumultuous and pretty non-existent around the time of her death. They were constantly arguing and just not seeing eye to eye. And their last time together prior to her death was on Mother's Day, and the two argued. The two would exchange pretty nasty text messages back and forth, and then a few months later, Mary was dead. Now, investigators had a motive for Adam, but were still brought back to their first suspect, Bill. And were questioning if Bill was attempting to frame his only son and had murdered his wife. A hairstylist of Mary's had been interviewed on this Hulu docuseries and kind of gave us a glimpse of the marital issues that were clearly present with Bill and Mary. Bill and Mary's children all state that they were madly in love, and to me it's a crock of shit. But anyway, the hairstylist says that a few days before Mary's death, during her appointment, she had received a phone call from Bill, and she had been heard saying, "No, we are not going to do that, and no, that is not going to happen." The stylist did not hear the context of these things, but the tone Mary used was very out of character for her. She was a typically happy-go-lucky Mary, and the verbiage used was not typical. There was obviously things that were going on in the marriage. Now, upon the public and Mary's own sisters finding out about the affair with their sister Kathy, which is disputable if the affair started sooner, but I think it did, personally. But Mary's other sisters took it upon themselves to call the sheriff's office and support the idea that Bill was responsible. Now, when the sisters had looked into the uses of colchicine, it's not only used for gout, it's also used to grow super marijuana. Now, the sisters knew in the early 80s Bill had grown a crop of super marijuana and had treated the seeds a special way. And the only way to grow super marijuana is with colchicine. Which, this is an issue because Bill was swearing up and down he had no idea what colchicine was, never dealt with it, when clearly he did. Now, the relationship Adam had with Bill was then put under a magnifying glass, and the relationship was just as strained and unique as Adam and Mary's. The relationship was described as strange and distanced and included little to no support. There were times that they were arguing and fighting because of Adam dropping out of college and really struggling with a drinking problem. And many stated that Bill basically disowned Adam and they were treating each other like strangers. So at this point, there are two major suspects in this case, which were Adam and Bill. Now, prior to the letter and Adam being taken into custody, Adam had asked Katie to be his girlfriend again, and this was in front of their group of friends, and Katie refused. Quite often throughout this documentary, we are played voicemails from Adam, as I've stated before. There's a lot going on with Adam mentally, and to me, he is just not a good guy. I'll just leave it at that. But from the beginning, Katie was compliant with officers. She's constantly telling them everything she knows to get whoever is responsible for her death. She's trying to point them in the right direction. Now, before investigators interview Bill, they haven't even interviewed him yet, even though he's been a suspect twice. They ask Katie to come in and give them more information on the Yoder family dynamic. Now, in December, 5 months after Mary's death, they call Katie back in. During the interview, she continuously is pointing the finger towards Adam and making her suspicions clear. This is when investigators ask her directly, "Did you write the letter?" And Katie says to investigators, "You can't protect me." They ask her again, and she confirms she did in fact write the letter incriminating Adam and pointing investigators in the direction of the colchicine. This is the moment that they treat her as a primary suspect. All the motives for Adam and Bill, they're gone. It is Katie. Katie tells them that while in the car with Adam, he tells her that there's colchicine under her seat and it's a poison. Katie is not an idiot. She connects the dots and in disbelief grabs the bottle, sees that it's there, puts it back mortified, and she's looking at Adam and she's like, and he basically says, he doesn't come right out and say he killed Mary, but says, "What do you want me to say? That I killed her?" Now, Katie states the only reason she sent the letter was because she was terrified of what Adam would do. He was obviously dangerous, and during this interview, she's sobbing and saying sheriffs won't protect her, and that Adam and his family, they're really smart. And at this time, the Conley family states Adam has been parking by their house each day while Katie is home and driving past their house often. Now, the police then say, even though they had Adam in custody, little boys don't kill their moms. And Katie then replies, "Yeah, but they also don't usually use poison." And a lot of people, including the investigators, thought that this was her putting her foot in her mouth. But hold that thought. She then goes on to say, because the investigators are like, well, basically disputing, Adam didn't do this, you know who did this. And Katie again incriminates herself by saying that colchicine or poison is a lady's murder weapon. At this point, police were convinced Katie was responsible. I don't believe that these statements were Katie incriminating herself, but Katie kind of telling investigators that there was a lot more going on here. The public knew about Bill and Kathy's relationship. I think in some ways Katie was telling them that she believed it was Bill and Kathy. I the investigators took those two statements and ran with it. And investigators lacked a clear connection between Conley and the case. They struggled with finding a motive, but when investigators researched Conley's background, they learned she and Adam had a interesting prior relationship that was on and off, and they also discovered that in April 2015, Conley had given him supplements intended to help him focus on his studies that ended up making him sick in 2000. They found that in 2015. They found this in 2016. They were just really struggling to tie her to this case, and in February 2016, detectives turned to computer forensic experts for help. This line of investigation turned up emails as well as prepaid gift cards used in the purchase of the colchicine that led to Conley. Now, the buying of the colchicine was used through an email linked to Adam. The email was adamyoder@gmail.com, and it was all linked back to Adam. But the orders were made on Conley's phone. Now, her DNA was also found on the colchicine vial found in Adam's Jeep, and she was ultimately charged with murder. The first trial resulted in a hung jury, the jury being 8-2, 2 believing Katie was not guilty. The DA then immediately charged her again and went for another trial that would begin in 6 months. Now, during that time, she was on house arrest. She could not leave. And during the first trial, it was later disclosed that one of the 2 jury members that voted Katie was innocent was familiar with the Conley family. He had rented from Katie's dad for years. He was a veteran, and when interviewed by the DA to be a juror, he stated he would convict his own daughter of murder if she was guilty. He maintains to this day Katie is innocent, and his connection with the family had nothing to do with his thoughts on this case. Now, during the second trial, Adam revealed that he had access to the contents of Conley's phone after she backed up her device on his computer in August 2015. The backup included screenshots of articles Conley had been reading titled "Why is Thallium the Poison of Choice for Poisoners and Terrorists?" and some of the world's most toxic substances. On November 6th, 2017, Katie was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter. They had the initial charge of second-degree murder, and while the jury was deliberating, the DA was getting nervous that they were going to let Katie off. So they added another option, manslaughter, because the amount that had been found on her phone that she had given, allegedly given Mary a dose that would only make her sick, not kill her. So they put in another option of manslaughter. Now, that gave 3 options: not guilty, manslaughter, and murder. And she was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter. In January 2018, she was sentenced to 23 years in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York and is eligible for parole in 2030. During her trial, Adam speaks and gives this very big speech about how he hates her and how he feels guilty for ever introducing her to his family. And in tears after that, Katie states, "I am innocent." During the docuseries, Adam's sister, Tamarin, states, "I hope she never makes it out of prison. I hope she makes it to 22 years and then gets killed in there, and she would be happy." Now, Conley's attorneys have unsuccessfully tried to appeal the court's decision several times, but was granted permission to appeal in May 2024. Currently, there is no court date that has been set. Conley's first time speaking out about her case was in the Hulu docuseries Little Miss Innocent. Now that is the case of Mary Yoder. Now, as far as my thoughts on this one, I would really like to bring up some things to you. I think with the evidence provided, it kind of makes this case look pretty cut and dry, and I just want to read this letter from Mary's sister to the sheriff's office to you really quickly. So, Mary was my sister, and I firmly believe that Kaitlyn Conley has been wrongfully convicted of her murder. A flawed and incomplete investigation was conducted by the Oneida County Sheriff's Office. Kaitlyn was indicted despite urgent pleas from my sisters Sally, Sharon, and myself to the investigators and the prosecuting ADA to consider the possibility that she was being framed. Our brother-in-law, Bill Yoder, had both financial and romantic motive to kill our sister. We had information to show that he had probable knowledge and use of colchicine, and in the early 1980s grew a crop of super marijuana. The investigators were not interested in what we had to say. They made up their minds that Kaitlyn was the killer after meetings with Bill Yoder and Adam Yoder, both of whom we believe are the persons responsible for Mary's death. To our horror, Bill and Adam were given full immunity in exchange for their testimony against Kaitlyn in a grand jury hearing. From that point forward, the prosecution team, along with the DA and the judge, appeared to be hell-bent on convicting Kaitlyn any way that they could. Mary died of colchicine poisoning, and that's all that was ever proven. She was a master gardener. Bill was no slouch in that regard either. The colchicine was ordered and sent to the chiropractic office that Bill and Mary owned and operated. The drug company required a letter explaining the intended use for the colchicine. The letter was signed by Mary and Adam and included sophisticated verbiage regarding a process of genetically modifying plants that results in all female plants. This is not something that Kaitlyn would have the knowledge of, and nothing was found on her devices to indicate that she had ever researched it. Despite the verbiage on the letter of intent and our efforts to explain the connection between colchicine and Bill's pot crop, the investigators refused to consider the possibility that it had been ordered by anyone other than Kaitlyn, or for any purpose other than to kill Mary. Kaitlyn was the office administrator at the time the colchicine was ordered and delivered. Note that there was a 6-month span between the delivery of the colchicine and Mary's death. The prosecution asserts that Kaitlyn ordered it and that she forged Mary and Adam's signatures on the letter of intent. The signatures appear to be legitimate, however, and the defense attorney clearly made that point by comparing them to other documents. Given how much the prosecution spent on less critical witnesses, one can assume that they would have called in a handwriting expert if they truly believed the signatures were forged. I believe that the colchicine was ordered by the Yoders, whether by Bill and or Adam and or Mary. I also believe that when Mary's cause of death was determined to be colchicine toxicity, that Bill and or Adam knew it would be eventually traced back to the office. To protect one or both of them, they worked together to implicate Kaitlyn. Adam was living with my son, David King, who became a witness for the defense in both trials. Bill and Adam never got along, but right after Mary's cause of death was determined, they started spending an unusual amount of time together, 2 to 3 days per week for many hours at a time. I believe they used time to work on their plan to frame Kaitlyn. Bill Yoder has been underestimated through all of this. He is a brilliant scholar with 2 PhDs and was a valedictorian in at least one of them. He is an avid murder mystery buff and a quintessential detailist. If anyone could pull off a murder and frame someone, he could. He has far more computer knowledge than he admits, and had access to the devices that incriminated Kaitlyn Conley, as did Adam. I can't know exactly who did that, but I believe both Bill and Adam had a hand in my sister's death. Adam is an extremely troubled young man with alcohol and drug dependency issues. He is 27 and until recently had not worked for several years. At the retrial, he testified that he is currently working part-time selling vacation timeshares. He admits to blackouts and fits of rage and violence. Tamara, his sister, states this as well. He is impulsive and vengeful, later regretting his actions. Mary enabled Adam by giving him money as much and as often as she could. Shortly before her death, however, she began to take firmer stands with him, and they had a falling out. Mother's Day. Maybe Adam meant only to get Mary sick so as to get back in her good graces by taking care of her, as has been said. This is consistent with Adam's behavior, but consider the fact that the level of colchicine in my sister's system was far greater at her death than when she first entered the hospital, and was high enough to kill her many times over. She had had severe diarrhea and vomiting for 2 days, which should have cleared her system. The fact that the colchicine levels were so high at her death suggest that she was dosed at least one more time. The only family member with access to her then was Bill. There was a CT drink brought to her hospital room and left there for her to drink. Bill testified that he brought Mary's Advair to the hospital and also cough drops. Why would he do that? Bill testified that he brought Mary's Advair and cough drops to the hospital. Why would he do that? The hospital team could and should have provided anything Mary needed. Note, the medicine that goes in an Advair discus is a fine powder, as is colchicine. Unfortunately, the medical examiner didn't test Mary's lungs for the presence of colchicine. Bill had everything to gain from Mary's death. He wanted to retire, but he and Mary had ongoing financial problems, and there were no retirement savings, just a lot of debt. Mary had told me that the little bit of retirement savings that they had set aside had been used for advertising to promote Bill's latest book. The advertising efforts did not pan out. Bill admitted to his daughter, my niece, as well, that the inheritance he received was not enough for two people to live on, but now that Mary was gone, he had enough to retire. This was contained in a statement my niece gave to the Oneida County Sheriffs. Given the amount of debt Mary told me they had, which was confirmed by a private investigator, the amount of the inheritance that Bill claimed he received was not enough to cover the debt and still live comfortably. He is currently involved with my eldest sister, Kathy. Kathy's neighbors testified in the first trial that she saw Bill at Kathy's house often before Mary died, and that she and her daughter had witnessed a passionate embrace and kiss between them on Kathy's front porch just days before Mary's death. My sister Kathy has a neurological disease, and therefore I do not believe is fully accountable for her actions/choices. Bill testified in both trials that his relationship with Mary was wonderful and getting better every day. Yet there was a call to a marriage counselor, presumably made by Mary, from their landline just days before her death. My sister Kathy is financially well off by most people's standards. I believe that is Bill's primary attraction to her, and I have told her that, and also that I worry for her safety. The information I've provided here is just barely the tip of the iceberg. Losing my beautiful sister is painful enough. Add to that a young woman falsely accused and wrongfully convicted of her murder, while the probable killers have total immunity, along with fear that another sister is in harm's way, is almost too much to bear. My sister Mary loved Kaitlyn, and Kaitlyn loved my sister. The justice system has failed both of them in a horrifying way. My sister Mary is gone, but we can help Kaitlyn. Please consider writing a letter of support for her. Your letter could mean the difference between a lenient sentence and a harsh one, and could also be helpful to ultimately overturn this unjust verdict. Now, that is the end of the letter from Mary's sister. I would first off like to say that I am not overlooking the evidence here, but I do think a lot of things that should have been considered evidence, such as all of this with Bill and Adam, was overlooked. I do think it's kind of unjust for the sheriff's office to think that the only ones that could have been framed were the Yoders. I know my thoughts on this case are very, I don't know, I guess they could be considered crazy, as some might think, but I do believe the possibility that Katie is innocent. I think it is possible that Adam and Bill did this together and used her as a scapegoat. I don't think Bill should be counted out. I think there's a lot of motive here. I think it is absurd that they made a motive of revenge through Mary by Katie. I think it's pretty obvious that Katie loved her job and loved it enough to continuously deal with her very toxic ex-boyfriend, and she loved his family enough to continue that and stay at the practice. Katie was quoted as being reputable and responsible and dedicated. She had an opportunity to be with Adam and didn't want to be. And the revenge motive, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's stated over and over that Mary and Katie were like this. They were like this. It just does not make sense to me. I also believe that the sheriff's department, I am from the area surrounding Sauquoit. I go through there often, and I know that the last, major murder case out this way that I know of that got this kind of media attention was the Eddie Mowers case, and that was in the 80s. I believe, and even with that case, I firmly believe that was handled not just terribly, but the easiest suspect was used, and that was it. I think that with the lack of experience in high-stakes cases, I think it's possible for these authorities to not make the right decision. I just think that it's a possibility that they just got super hyped up when they find the quickest answer and they run with it to get the case closed, get that notoriety. I just think there's much more here, and the fact that Mary's sisters are screaming, they're giving them all these tools, and they're saying, please just look at these things, and they ignored it. They gave these two people immunity when they had every single split of motive. There was motive, there was opportunity, there was an affair, there was money issues, there was both for Adam and Bill. And these men are both very smart, and then Adam miraculously has this backed up information from her phone, and things can be doctored, things can be done. I don't agree. I just don't. And I know I took a very unexpected take, probably, and I'm not sure. I'm sure many will not be happy with my perspective, and just know that I would never make you feel discredited for your opinion. I am open to thoughts, I am open to ideas, I'm aware of the evidence, but I'm aware of the other evidence and stuff that wasn't really brought into this case that needed to be. I feel bad for the Yoders because I feel like they lost their mother and now they're just trying to pull at straws to defend the actions of Adam and Bill, when it's just, this was a mess in every way, shape, and form. But just be mindful to be respectful in the comments below. Any opinion is a valid opinion and you are entitled to it. And this is a safe space for thoughts and ideas. And that is today's video. I know there's a lot of background noise, a lot of my stomach talking, and I hope that despite that, this video is relaxing and informative for you. Thank you so much for watching, and spooky dreams.